Hey from the kitchen, folks. Today I'm going to have a go at making a beer from grain in the demijohn. I'm not quite sure what that beer is going to be yet. I'll work that out as I go along, but let's have a look at the ingredients. So I'm going to use a kilogram of Pale Maris Otter or extra Pale Maris Otter Malt, 500 grams of Deingemans Pilsen Malt. To start with, 5 litres of spring water, because the tap water in Leeds is chlorine, and there'll be some more spring water besides that probably. I've got 250 grams of medium spray malt from Wilco's, some CrossMyLoof Amarillo Hops in pellet form, some CrossMyLoof Kolsch Yeast, and a little bit of Polish Yeast Nutrient. So it's a right mishmash. That's why I don't know what I'm going to call this one yet. So I've got my big saucepan and I'm going to begin by getting my grain into the saucepan. So in goes the Deingemans Pilsen Malt. Cloudy. That's getting followed by the extra Pale Maris Otter. And then following that, I'm going to add most of this spring water in there. Try and do it gently so as not to slop everywhere. In fact, I'm going to get all of the water in, I think. Yep. So that's 5 litres in my big pan. So this is what I've got, and I'm just going to give this a move around. I want to make sure it's all nicely mixed. I don't want anything stuck to the bottom. And I want this to get nicely hydrated and a nice loose mixture. Something resembling chicken soup. So I'm going to take my spoon out and I'm going to put it across the top because I need to put the heat on, and if this does come to a boil, the spoon will prevent boil over. My mum taught me that. So I'm going to put the heat on, and I want it on a really low heat, because what I want to happen now is for this to very, very slowly come up to temperature over several hours. So there's nothing else to do at the minute, so I'll be back later. See you then. Okay, so it's actually 5 hours later. I've been periodically coming and giving it a stir. It's never come to a boil, it's just steam coming off it, and really it's mashed nicely, I think. What I'm going to do now is take the heat off. I'm going to put this on, and I'm now leaving this overnight because I want it to cool down before moving to the next phase. Hey folks, welcome back to the kitchen. It's the next day. Let's have a look at my beer wort. Here it is with the grain. It's been sat overnight, it's steeped very nicely. I'm going to separate it from the grain today. So I'm going to get the liquid collected into that demijohn. I'm going to do it through that sieve, and I'm also going to be using this colander over a tagine. Then the liquid will eventually go back in here with a bit more liquid, which I'm going to use to do a bit of sparging with the dried grain, or the squeezed grain, I should say. So this is by far the messiest part of the brew process, definitely. I'll try not to make too much mess, but it's inevitable that I will. It's also not that exciting. So I'm not going to do the whole thing on camera, I'm just going to sort of demonstrate how this works and then come back to you at the end. But as you can see at the minute, I'm just ladling into the sieve. And the liquid wort is collecting down there. So when my sieve gets full, I simply use the back of the ladle to push and try and squeeze any liquid that I can out of the grain. I want to get all the fermentable sugars that I can out of there. When I've squeezed it and there's nothing else coming out, then the grain is going into this colander, and I'm just going to let it sit in there, and hopefully some more liquid will drip through into the tagine below. I will also be squeezing it a little bit also. So I'm just going to carry on doing this. There's no point in you watching me do the whole thing because it's really not that exciting. So I'll be back to you once I've got to the end of this stage. Anyway, this is a messy job. So that's where I am so far. That's the collected grain. I want to put that back in here now. This is by far the worst part of the brew process. The messiest anyway. And I've got to do it all again because I enjoy it that much. Wonderful. I didn't get a lot of liquid out of that, I'll be honest with you, but I want to stick that in the demijohn. It's very gloopy. So there's my grains. And in homage to the sparge, I'm going to add about 3 litres of spring water into them. It's cold spring water. I'm not warming this up. In true sparge style, I'm going to stir this in. And I want it to extract any further sugars that might be within that grain. And I'm now going to leave this and let it sit for a couple of hours before continuing. So I'll be back then. Okay, 2 hours have passed. Round 2 commences, and it's just a repeat of round 1. And I'm going to do this now until I've got all of the grain pushed through the sieve and squeezed through the sieve so all the liquid comes out. And then I'm going to give the grain one final squeeze. I'll be back in a bit. Okay, so this is what I'm left with. So I've got a gallon of liquid on the left in the demijohn, and then in the jug there to the right I've got just over a litre of liquid also. Yes, I can fluctuate between imperial and metric. It's what happens when you were born in the 70s in Britain. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let this settle. There'll be a sediment line builds up to around about here, and I'm going to siphon that off before going to the next stage. That's why I've got more liquid than what I want to top up what I'm going to lose in the bottom down here. So this isn't done yet. There's plenty more to go. So I'll be back in another hour. Okay, an hour has passed. Let's have a look at the beer wort. And you will notice that it is extremely sediment heavy. Now I haven't boiled the wort yet, and that's the next step, but I don't want all of this sediment. I want to replace some of that with what's in here. So I'm going to rack this off down to about there and then add the contents of that jug. I want some of this because there's obviously flavour and sugar in that, but if I leave it like that, all I'm going to end up with is a demijohn full of sediment and not very much beer. So I'm just going to put my siphoning tube in here. Right, let the merriments begin. Like I said, I'm going to go down into the sediment, but not too far into the sediment. I'm going to get some anyway. I mean, that's without saying. That's as far down as I'm going to go. As you can see, I am picking up sediment. That'll do. So I've got my pan on the ring. I'm going to add what's in the jug. I might not add everything. I might save a little bit of sediment in there. Yeah, that'll do. And I'm going to put this on low. And I want to slowly let this come to the boil. Okay, a further hour has passed. And the wort is now on the boil. It's looking good. So here is my 250 grams of spray malt. I'm going to introduce this now at this point. I don't want it to boil over. And I'm going to stir it as it goes in, so that doesn't happen. The other danger with chucking it all in is that it becomes a big lump. And I'm now going to add the remainder. Right, that's my spray malt in. I've now got my Amarillo hops, and I am going to throw in a massive 40 grams. Oh, 42, that will do. I want this to be hoppy. These hops have been open for a while. They do lose their potency. So I've put 10 grams more in than what I was going to do normally. So in go the hops. So the hops are in, and this is now going to gently simmer for a further 30 minutes. Just a 30-minute update. You can see the hops were on the top. I'm just stirring them in. Steamy. Okay, we're just over an hour into the boil now, and I'm going to turn this off, and that is now going to sit and cool down to room temperature overnight. So once again, I'll catch you tomorrow. Welcome back to the kitchen, folks. It's day 3 of this brew. So I didn't need to do it over 3 days. I've just chose to do it this way. I could have done this in 1 day, but I've took my time. This has been sitting overnight now, this beer wort, and I'm now going to pour it, fire a funnel with a strainer into the demijohn before adding the yeast and getting it going with fermentation. And this will actually also allow me to be a bit more discriminating against the sediment in the bottom, a lot of which I don't want in my brew. I've now got all the beer wort in the demijohn. I've got plenty of headspace there for the krausen, hopefully. So let's get it in here and see what the original gravity is. And I'm starting off with a lovely original gravity. It's going to be a good strong beer. I'm on 1.086, 1086 rocket fuel. So my yeast of choice today is Kolsch Yeast, good German lager type Pilsner drink from the Cologne area. It's actually a really nice yeast. Okay, I'm gonna leave that. There's approximately 1 good generous heaped teaspoon or thereabouts gone in there. I'm now going to add some of this Browin Yeast Nutrient. This is a Polish wine yeast nutrient, but it's fine. It works just as well with beer yeast. And I'm just going to pour a little bit of this in. This will just give the yeast a bit more of a happy time. It's going to have a very happy time in there anyway. So again, I've put the equivalent of about a heaped teaspoonful in there. My demijohn now needs agitating, which will mix the yeast in just nicely, just giving it a good spin round. Okay, that looks good to me. Okay, I've got my airlock in. Now we just got to wait for the magic to happen. And just a 30-minute update. The fermentation has already started. 12 hours later, this is what I'm confronted with. I guess we can say that fermentation is happening. Hey from the kitchen, folks. Today I'm going to be racking off and hopefully clearing my strong beer. Let's have a look at it. So it's been in the demijohn now for 2 weeks and it looks pretty good to me, but it's completely stopped fermenting. There's a layer of sediment just there, and then there's some trubby mess on the top of the demijohn, but this beer in the middle looks quite nice. So I want to remove it from here into here and add some finings. So it's bung out, siphoning tube in. I've got the bottom of the tube just into the sediment. That's fine. So let's rock and roll. So the first bit that's come out is a bit sediment heavy, but that doesn't matter. Oh, messy. Well, it certainly smells very beery, which is always a good sign when you're making beer. I'm using Clear It beer and wine finings from Young's. It's a 2-step process. I'm going to pour some of bottle A in, and then I'm going to leave it for an hour before transferring back into the original demijohn with some of bottle B. So bottle A first. So I'm going to add the equivalent of about a teaspoon, or thereabouts. And there we go, bubbles in the siphoning tube. Tell us that that's over. So this is my beer. I'm just going to give it a shake around and a stir around to ensure that the finings are nicely mixed. It's looking pretty good to me. I've just put a flat metal lid on top of the plastic vessel here to stop any contamination, anything getting in there. I'm going to leave this for an hour now, and then we'll have a look at it before transferring back into the original demijohn. So I'll catch you then. Okay folks, an hour has passed. Let's have a look, and you can see that there's clearly some sediment collected in the bottom just there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-siphon this now just above that level back into the original demijohn before adding finings B. So once again, I've got my siphoning tube in place. Let's do it. I'm just going to run this through, and I'm going to add finings B while it's running in there. So there's my finings B. Again, similar to a teaspoonful. And there we go, that's over. So once again, give it a swish around. Make sure the finings and the beer is nicely mixed. Let's say it is at that. Okay, I'm going to pop the airlock back in. And I'm now going to leave this for 3 or 4 days. Let's see what happens. Catch you then. Greetings from the kitchen, folks. It's my strong brown beer bottling day. Here it is. It's been sat in this fermenting vessel for 5 days since I added the finings. I don't think it's going to get any clearer. You can see a very small amount of sediment in the bottom. I reckon I've got about 3 litres of beer here, so it really isn't a very efficient way brewing in a demijohn from grain. Once I've used up my current grain supply, I think I'm going to switch to kits. But anyway, let's just get on with it. So I've got my bottles in the sink. I'm bottling into mostly 500ml bottles, and then I've got a 330 in reserve. I'm going to put what is about the equivalent of a level teaspoonful of sugar into each bottle. This is called priming sugar, and this is just so the beer will have, hopefully, a bit of carbonation, a bit of life, and a bit of a sparkle, and hopefully a head when I pour it. So it's bung out, siphoning tube in. I'm holding the tube in place with this clip. The bottom is just on the sediment line, but the first bit that comes out, which will be sediment heavy, is going to go into the hydrometer tube. So let's do it. I got a mouthful, and I'll tell you what, that tastes like beer. It really did taste like beer. I'm so happy when that happens. Oh dear. Okay, so if I can get 3 litres out of this, I'll be happy. It had a very nutty finish, that actually. It was like a brown ale. High hopes, please, please, carb. So just to explain to you, those that don't know, the carbing process is the yeast which is in suspension in the beer, eating the sugar, which I've put into the bottles, the priming sugar. When it does that, it will create a little bit more alcohol, only a tiny amount, but it will also, as a byproduct, create CO2, which will create pressure, which is what gives your beer the sparkle, and that's what I'm after. Some people force carbonate and do all sorts of fancy things. I'm much more basic. I am basic. So hopefully I'll get enough to fill this bottle. Yeah, it's just going to do it. That's it. Bubbles in the siphoning tube. Perfect. So let's check out the final gravity of this brew. That is finishing on a final gravity of 1.022. So it's time to work out what the alcohol by volume is. So to do that, I take the original gravity, which was 1.086. I deduct from that the final gravity, which is 1.022, and that equals 0.064. And then I multiply this number by 131.25, and that equals, drumroll please, 8.4%. Cracking. So I think I'm just going to call this, that's a strong ale, I'm just going to call this my strong brown autumn ale, because it will be autumn by the time I drink it. So I'm capping today with my Kegland crown capper. It's not my favourite job, I must admit, I don't like doing this. But anyway, persevering. I'm doing it downwards into the sink, so the bottle is less likely to slip than doing it at a higher level on a work surface. And also note it's on a silicone mesh mat, which is non-slip, so the bottle hopefully won't move as I'm doing it. Because when it does, it makes you jump. I've got the cap inside the capper, it's magnetic, bring it down onto the bottle, and it will either go nicely or it will be horrible. Let's see what happens. And this one is going to go nicely. There we go. That is one nicely capped bottle. I've got another 5 to do. I'll be back to you when I've done them. And just for a change, that worked a charm. No incidents, no slipping, no jumping, no swearing. I think that's the first. So I'm just going to give these a rinse under the tap to get any sticky residue off before labelling them. So I've got my labels made up in a simple Microsoft Word template. I'm just going to print those off. Okay, I'm just labelling my bottles. Just want them to look nice. Take a bit of pride. And I hope that this will be a successful beer. And there they all are. So I'm just upstairs in my brew room, my conditioning room, and I'm just going to condition these bottles in this box now for at least a month. Now it will stay around about 20 degrees in this room for the next month before temperatures start to drop at autumn. When that does happen, I've got some shelves with a heater behind over there. But for now, I'm just going to condition these in this box to start with for a month. So what I might do is leave them in this box for 4 weeks. And then after the 4 weeks, put them on my shelves with the heater behind for another 2 weeks. So I'm probably going to be opening these sometime around about mid to late October. So I'll catch you next time, folks, for the opening and tasting. Fingers crossed, it's going to be a nice one. See you then. Good evening from the kitchen, folks. It's my strong brown autumn ale opening night. I'm very excited about this one. The last 2 beers that I've done have turned out quite well. Can I make it a triple? I just don't know. Let's find out. So, when I open this, I want to hear a tss. I want there to be some life in it. I want it to pour nicely with a head. I want it to look good in the glass. I want it to smell nice. But above all, I want it to taste like a good, strong brown ale. Is it too much to ask for? Let's find out. Here goes. A bit of noise. I've got vapour. Get in. Right. Oh! It looks like a Bobby Dazzler. Look at that. It's not as brown as I thought it was going to be. It's definitely got a bit lighter. But I'll tell you what, that has got life in it. Look at the bubbles. It smells absolutely gorgeous. There's a bit of fruitiness to it almost. The grain smell, the smell of the malt comes through massively. I want to drink it, but I've got to battle that froth first. I'll just pour a little bit more in. Right, wish me luck folks, I'm going in. Well, that didn't help. It were nice enough though. I need to get down to the liquid. I feel like I need a snorkeling mask. Right, not far off now. I'm so happy with that head. And the way it's coming up from the bottom of the glass, it's not even a head keeping glass. That is just lively. It's just perfect. Nearly there. I'll tell you what I've just sampled then was very nice. It's bloody lovely. That is absolutely delicious. It's got like a burnt, caramelised maltiness to it. I'm trying to think of the right words. It's very gassy, but yeah, it's more gassy than I like a beer to be. It's fantastic. Burnt toffee, burnt caramel, malts, a bit of Horlicks. It's got everything a growing boy needs. I mean, that is absolutely spot on. If you'd given me this in a pub, I would have been over the moon with it. It's almost got like a slight syrupiness to it, like a slight Belgian quality almost. It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. I'm so pleased with this. I did not expect it to come out as well as that. I mean, you saw what a mission I had making it, and what a mishmash of a beer it was. They always are. You know, all grain is complicated. It's a lot of messing about, but when it works, by golly, it's worth it. And that is great. I'm really, really pleased with it. So cheers, folks. Happy brewing, and I'll catch you on the next brew. The film that you've just watched is a Moss Home & Garden production. You can find more by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. I'd just like to say thank you very much for supporting my YouTube channel and for watching my films. It really is very much appreciated. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel in order to receive future updates about the home and garden films which I upload. You can find my YouTube channel by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. Please click on the red subscribe button. When you've done that, a little bell will appear. If you press that also, then you'll get future updates about the films which I upload. If you like my films, if you like my style of filming, then you might also like my travel channel, which you will find by going to youtube.com/Stuart Moss or type in www.mosstravel.tv. Again, if you could subscribe to that channel, it would be hugely appreciated. If you'd like to get Moss Home & Garden updates on Facebook, then please open Facebook and do a search for Moss Home & Garden, and you will find the page. If you like the page, then you will get future updates on there. And if you'd like to connect on Instagram for home, garden and travel photography, as well as some stories, then my username is StuMoss, STUMOSS. If you'd like to connect on Twitter, then my username is @StuartMoss. And if you'd like to contact me about film usage or any other issue, please just email me on stewmosshomegarden@gmail.com. Once again, thank you very much for supporting my channel, for watching my films. I do appreciate it. I'd just like you all to have a great day.